As we welcome you into Hour 2 of America's Forum, you see the three flags of three foreign nations. And this may sound like some sort of sick April Fool's joke, but it is not. We have an agreement now, our government signing agreements with those three foreign nations to do nothing but teach immigrants how to unionize. The agreement does not differentiate between those who enter the country legally or illegally. A memo about this agreement reads in part, and I'm quoting now, "With coordination from the consulates, we expect to meet with Mexican workers around the country to help forge innovative solutions to issues specific to their needs." To talk about issues specific to our needs, let's call on Mark Nix, president of the National Right to Work Committee. He joins us from Newsmax, Washington. Mark, it's great to have you on America's Forum. And what was your reaction when you first heard about this agreement?
Well, JD, it's good to be on with you, too. It's good to talk with you again. You've been such a fighter on these issues in particular when you were a member of Congress. But, you know, we shouldn't be surprised, JD. This is an extension of an executive branch action. Knowing that they can't get these power grabs through Congress, they're using executive action to do this. The National Labor Relations Board has been set up by the president and confirmed by Harry Reid, rammed through by Harry Reid, to do just this type of thing. They tried to organize workers by card check a couple of years back. They couldn't get that done. And now we've seen this regulatory push, and it's not surprising. It's discouraging, for sure, and it's almost hard to believe, for sure, but it's not surprising.
Mark, Rush Limbaugh weighed in on this on his radio program. Let's take a listen to what Rush had to say.
We're going to teach these people how to unionize. We're going to teach them how to join a union. We're going to teach them how to think like a union member does. We're going to teach them how to vote like a union member does. And we're going to get them conditioned to paying dues to the Democrat Party.
Well, we know that the Committee on Political Education and all the inner workings of Democrat funding, by and large, predominantly goes from unions to Democrats. Will this help the Democrats, or will it backfire in terms of American workers seeing foreign workers holding wages down and joining the ranks of the unions?
Well, JD, I think the latter is true. I think that most American union members who support their unions and support, what the unions do for them are going to be very, very interested in this particular effort to dramatically increase the number of people, both illegal or legal, as the Memorandum of Understanding say. They don't distinguish between the two. This is something that is an issue that breaks badly, I think, with rank and file union members around the country who are, love America. They're patriots. They appreciate their guns. They oppose increases in taxes, and yet they see an administration and they see an out-of-control leadership here in Washington in the union headquarters around the Capitol doing these types of things that could endanger their jobs, frankly. And so it's something that I think will probably backfire on them, and something that, now that it's gotten a little bit of sunlight through this program and through Rush Limbaugh and through the Washington Examiner, and I think Sean Higgins was the original author of this article. I mean, now that it's got some exposure, I suspect the thing will bog down considerably.
Well, you would think so, and yet you mentioned the union bosses there surrounding Capitol Hill who seem to be very active, working with the president hand in glove to open the borders, to have low-wage, low-skill workers come in and depress wages. When will the rank and file wake up? I guess this may be the issue, the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back.
Perhaps it will be, JD, but the union movements, the union bosses in particular, are confronted with some very difficult situations. We passed 3 new right-to-work laws in the last 3 years: Indiana, Michigan, and now Wisconsin, signed by Scott Walker just 2 weeks ago. And now in the government sector, union officials are very concerned that the Supreme Court is finally going to take away their ability to force government workers to pay union dues or fees to get or keep a job. And so they've got to find new revenue. And so what's the best place to do that right now is go down to 1600 Pennsylvania to the White House and ask this president to encourage his executive branch agencies to find new ways to organize workers so they'll pay dues, as you mentioned. And shoot, if we can't get them here in America, if we can't convince American workers to join unions, we better train Mexicans and Ecuadorians and Filipinos how to do that, so when they get here that the unions can have some revenue.
Well, it's a very disturbing development, and we appreciate you shedding some light on that. And Mark, you made mention of the establishment of right to work laws in 3 states. When we come back, we're going to talk about the future of the right to work. And yes, the future of unions, the political impact, and what's ahead as we look ahead to 2016. All of that is ahead as America's Forum continues again. It's April 1st. We're not playing a joke with you on this money going to train immigrants on how to unionize. That's the truth, sadly, and sometimes the truth hurts. But we'll be back with more right after this.
To see how much the tide has shifted just in the past year or two since we last saw the big fight over union reforms in Wisconsin. You know, when Governor Walker did the Public Sector Union Reforms Act 10 in Wisconsin in 2011, you'll recall it was, you know, the entire state looked like Europe. There were massive protests. There was 100,000 people on the streets. And this go round, you know, the protests were pretty limited.
Colin Levy, a senior editorial writer for the Wall Street Journal, weighing in on the changing tide of public opinions when it comes to union membership and the right to work. Let's continue our conversation with Mark Mix, president of the National Right to Work Committee. And Mark, we should probably start with the name of your organization. And sometimes we develop this shorthand about the right to work. Explain to our viewers exactly what this is.
Yeah, JD, the issue is so simple that it's hard to do it in a intense show like this. But the right to work laws that are on the books in now 25 states simply say that a worker's right to join, to associate, to allow a union to bargain for them, to allow them to pay union dues is all protected. But in the 25 states that have right to work laws, a worker cannot be compelled to join or pay dues or fees to a union to get or keep a job. It really is that simple. It's been a debate for the last 80 years in America since 1935 when the federal government passed what's known as the Wagner Act and imposed this federal policy of compulsion on the states. It went too far, so in 1947 Congress came back in and allowed the states to, in kind of a peculiar move, allowed the states to preempt the federal law that allows compulsion and says if you can affirmatively outlaw this compulsory unionism, you're allowed to do that under the federal law. And 25 states have done that. And so anyone who wants to join a union can, anyone who wants to pay dues to a union can, but anyone who doesn't want to in those 25 states can't be compelled or lose their jobs.
And the most recent from the of those 25 states, Wisconsin. And that was what the talk was about. Scott Walker, besieged early on as governor, faced a recall, faced a battle against a motivated public union, in other words, unions for bureaucrats and government workers. But he was able to prevail, and now Wisconsin is a right-to-work state. What does that say about Scott Walker's presidential prospects, how he'll play on the national stage?
Well, JD, as you know, the right to work law is popular. 8 out of 10 Americans believe it's wrong to force workers to pay dues or fees to get to keep a job. And as you know, being here in Washington for all those years, you know that there are a lot of wilting violets when it comes to fights like this, standing up for principle and standing up for these basic individual freedoms. Organized labor has power out of all proportions to their numbers. They have, it appears now that their bark may be worse than their bite. Scott Walker stood up to the government unions in 2011 and helped reform the labor policy in the state of Wisconsin, leading to the eradication of what was a $3 billion deficit up there that they were looking at. School districts there are happy with the reforms now that school boards and elected officials are now more accountable to taxpayers instead of union officials. But on the campaign trail, as you know, if you go to Iowa and you go to South Carolina and you go to Virginia and some of those other states, being for right to work is going to be good politics for Scott Walker as well.
And it was good politics for me in Arizona, although I had some dust-ups with the unions nationally during my days in Congress. I'm interested in Arizona's neighbor, Nevada. With Harry Reid retiring from the U.S. Senate, with Nevada in play, in flux, with a governor there by the name of Brian Sandoval, Do you think we will ever
Yeah, I
see
think
Nevada?
so, JD. You know,
adopt
Nevada
right
is
to
one
work?
of those great states. It does have a right to work law, but it has roughly a 21% union density, meaning that union officials there are probably doing their job. They're convincing people in the gambling business and other industries in Nevada to join unions because they're actually providing services. But I think the right to work issue, which we've debated on in Nevada over the years, they've tried to repeal it again and again, and the people in Nevada have stood up and told their politicians that they want the freedom to choose whether or not to join or financially associate with the union. I think Governor Sandoval has protected the right to work law out there when the legislature wasn't so good. I think he will be a very formidable candidate in the state of Nevada. I think there will others probably maybe rise up between now and then. But certainly, if he stands up for right to work in Nevada, it's going to be an advantage for him.
And so really it's around Clark County there and Las Vegas where the union movement is so strong there in the battle-born state. We'll see what battles exist there. But unions, in terms of what we've seen recently, their growth area is with government employees, not in free market jobs. Can you explain that in 40 seconds?
Yeah, absolutely, JD. It's a great business model. Basically, there is no bottom line in government, so any demands you make, any wins you get at the bargaining table are going to be funded by increased taxes. They help to grow government. It's I think it was Elijah in the wilderness. He had that oil bottle that kept refilling. That's kind of what government is to them. It's their final frontier for unionization.
And they moved in there courtesy of an executive order from John F. Kennedy in the summer of 1963, even after no less a liberal than Franklin Delano Roosevelt warned against allowing bureaucrats and government employees to unionize. Fascinating to look at the history, and obviously it's as relevant as today with our money going to fund the training of unionization to immigrants. Mark Mix, we thank you for the time, and there is more straight ahead on America's Forum.